All right, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on the hotel industry, recovery, and future development in our communities. My name is Brandon Hofstede, and I'm the Community Economic Development Program Manager with the University of Wisconsin Division of Extension. And it's my pleasure to kick off today's webinar, which is focused on the challenges experienced by the lodging industry due to the pandemic, and then also changing travel behaviors, both within the United States and specifically across the state of Wisconsin. And we have a wonderful panel of industry experts who are joining us today for this discussion. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping rules. Today's meeting is being recorded. Final video with transcription will be posted on our website probably within about a week. And if you registered for this event, you will have a follow-up email with that information so you can locate any supporting materials as well as the video when it is ready. Also, if you need closed captioning, you can find closed captioning at the bottom of your screen. If you hover over the bar at the bottom, there is an option for closed captioning. And you can click that and it will start it for you. As a friendly reminder, please be sure to mute your microphones. We do have a moderator and panel setup. Bill Ryan, who I'll introduce in just a second, will be our moderator. And if you have questions, you can either drop those questions directly to myself as a private chat, or you can send it to the entire group. And if you feel comfortable and there's an opportunity when Bill, as the moderator, opens the floor, you can also unmute yourself and ask a question of the moderator or our presenters today. And with that, it's an honor to actually introduce my friend and colleague and today's moderator, Bill Ryan. Bill has been with Extension for about 31 years, and this is his final week with Extension. So it's a bittersweet moment for me because Bill is not only a wonderful person to work with, but is an incredible asset to the state of Wisconsin and Extension. And we're so excited that he gets to go into retirement, but we also will be missing him. And I'm super happy that this is the last webinar that we'll be doing together. So with that, I'll let Bill introduce our panelists and today's discussion. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brandon. And just a quick background of why we're doing this webinar. Hotels provide an important service to our communities and represent a significant economic engine for jobs, business income, and taxes. And they often serve as a gateway for our communities, welcoming people to our communities and helping encourage economic development. During the pandemic, the hotel industry has experienced significant challenges, including changes in travel behaviors. And while typically it's historically a volatile industry, it can provide a decent return on investment to investors and communities, and all depending on location and rates and occupancy levels and operating costs. So there's a lot of variability in the profitability of a hotel. And the experts that we have today are going to help us walk through that and the importance of hotels to communities, but also how do we measure the potential of a hotel in a community. Now, 30 years ago, we did a program like this about this time of year, and it included two of our speakers today. And I'll have you guess who they are, but they had to come in training wheels, I think, to the program. It was that long ago. And we're going to kind of repeat what happened in the past 30 years and listen to some of the work that they've done with hotel development in Wisconsin and beyond in the past 30 years. So I'm going to start with introducing our speakers one at a time so you get to know them, and then you'll have a sense of who they are after we go through three questions. So the first question is going to be for Mike Lindner. And Mike is a consultant with the Hotel R&D LLC, and he's completed hotel market studies and feasibility studies since 1991. He has conducted more than 450 market studies and for new hotels and tourist developments in a variety of major secondary and primary cities and foreign markets for developers, operators, and community economic development organizations. And he's proved extensive impact analysis on many communities from the hotel development. So my first question for Mike is the importance of hotel development to a local economy. What does it do for us in a community that doesn't have a hotel yet, or maybe has many hotels? What is the primary benefit for having a hotel in a community, Mike?
First of all, thanks, Bill, and thanks for the intro, and thanks for bringing up 1991 when I've been doing studies, so now I feel really old.
I didn't say you were one of the two there.
Yeah. I think I want Brandon to do my intro next time. He was so good. No, I'm just kidding. You know, it's communities see hotels as kind of a stepping stone for other economic development or additional economic development. The one thing that I think really drives communities, and this is smaller communities with no hotels, or maybe an older hotel supply, maybe a gap in their hotel supply. They see visitors to their local companies or their tourist events and their attractions going to other communities to spend their lodging dollars, which ultimately means they're spending their dining dollars and entertainment dollars somewhere else. And a lot of communities see that, and that's what drives the desire for a new hotel or an additional hotel. And it's true. I mean, we do economic impact profiles that show, the amount of money, the millions of dollars that can leave a community for visitors that would spend the night. So that's the principle. That's the primary reason. Quality of life of residents, quality of life of visitors is all part of that too, where they want people to stay in their community and stay while they're visiting the area. So that's really the primary driver behind trying to attract, and that includes larger areas too, that maybe there's a gap, extended stay or a convention hotel or conference hotel, all suite. I mean, it can go in many different directions and many different size communities.
Mike, a quick add-on question to that. What is the impact of a hotel in the community relative to another kind of business? In other words, looking at the cost structure of a hotel with high payroll, variable payroll, how does that change the equation in terms of the economic impact on a community when you have so much labor that stays local?
Well, and that's it. You attract local, and the hotel industry in particular, is not well known for high paying positions, which is changing rapidly. Like everywhere else, they are going up, but they do offer a variety of jobs, and they aren't all totally skilled type labor. There's many, and I'm a perfect example. I started with after a family motels. I worked in our family properties. I worked for Marriott, and I started as a van driver, and then worked my way into the front desk, and then worked my way into the sales department. And it was nothing had to do with college. I went to college to be a DJ, and that didn't work out well, thank God. But it offers a wide variety of jobs, and of course we'll get into that. The labor market is really tight right now, obviously, but I think that's one of the strengths of the industry. It pulls locals that maybe don't want a full-time employment, want to work in an service atmosphere. So, and any hotel operator will argue with me, but in all of the recessions and economic downturns and employment issues that we faced over the decades that I've been in the industry, I shouldn't have said decades, years, we've always managed to find employment. You have to adjust, you have to cross-train, you have to do various things to make up for any deficiencies. But we've always found employees and people that want to work in a hotel, and that helps the community a ton.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Now, we didn't say that you were here 30 years ago, but you're one of the candidates here for that question for the group. The next speaker is Bill Elliott, CAE. He's the president of and CEO of the Wisconsin Hotel and Lodging Association, WHLA. I've been calling it the Innkeepers Association, dating myself. Bill returned to the WHLA as president and CEO in June of 2020. Earlier, he worked in various roles at WHLA, focusing on membership development, advertising programs, and operations. He has championed the effort to put $95 million in grant funding into use by hotel and lodging properties owners who were impacted by COVID-19. Bill, my question for you is, how is the industry doing this summer? Usually the word of mouth comes through your organization that we're above last year, we're below last year, we're above expectations or not. How are we doing?
Yeah, well, we're doing, I think if you look at it from 30,000 feet above, we're doing well. We're coming back strong. Some areas of the state had record summers last year, and some are telling me they're going to break those records this year. And as you can imagine, a lot of that is in the leisure space. Think of the Door counties of the world and the places where people are taking some of their bigger vacations. But it's more of a mixed picture than that. Business travel is still down and coming back, but it's coming back slowly. Not too long ago, a study was published showing that We project business travel to be down about $168 million in Wisconsin versus 2019. So that's better than it was last year, but it's still about 17% down of where we were in 2019. In terms of the leisure market, I think that's where we're seeing the strength coming back. We're seeing that drive rates, but that's a bounce back from a really bad low for us. Our industry lost $1 billion in revenue alone in 2020 compared to 2019, and the $1 billion sounds big no matter what, but when you think of the fact that we were only about 2.3 billion the year before, that's a really big number. So we're slowly digging out of that, even as rates are going higher. Expenses are much higher. We've already talked a little bit about the labor problems, but in addition to that, our other supply chain problems are still problematic for us. So like every industry out there, we're dealing with the inflation that's happening right now too. But all in all, I think we're in an upward trend. We're happy to see business coming back. We're happy to see that demand back again.
Thanks, Bill. And also thanks for your hospitality with your organization. I remember when I moved here 30 years ago, it was hard to kind of crack into the organization and get to know people. And it's much different today with your participation in this webinar. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. So.
Well, the third panelist, let's see if he's been here for 3 decades or not. His name is Richard Sprecher, and he currently serves as Vice President of Development for, here's a big test of pronunciation, Mayor Jabara Hotels. Uh-oh.
It's Meyer Jabara.
Meyer Jabara?
Yeah, I work for 2 guys, Bill Meyer and Justin Jabara.
Meyer Jabara Hotels. Okay, I'll forget that probably. I apologize. Based out of Nashville, Tennessee area. Prior to joining Meyer Jabara Hotels, Rich spent over 11 years with Aimbridge Hospitality, serving as the Vice President of Business Development. In 2009, he formed the Distressed Hotel Asset Division of Aimbridge, which also worked as Director of Franchise Sales for the Upper Midwest for Choice Hotels, 117 years back in the 90s, no, actually 2000, and held senior management positions at the Marhouse Properties, Bradbury Suite Hotels, Adams Mark Resorts, Stouffer Hotels, Renaissance Hotels, well, even everywhere, Rich.
Yep.
So maybe you do make the 30-year mark then. And it goes on and on. And this guy is just full of talent and full of energy. And I just enjoy working with him so much. So the tough question for Richard today, since he's always up on current trends in hospitality and new products. By the way, your experience with distressed hotels seems like a really interesting job because there's a lot of upside in taking an old hotel and repositioning it in the market. So you probably have a lot of good stories of how hotels have been improved in communities. But can you answer a question? Where are we heading right now? We have this trend in the industry where people have not traveled very much. Now they're traveling and they're traveling for different purposes. Where are we heading in terms of the kind of consumers we have for lodging today, and how have they changed since pre-pandemic?
Well, yeah, the current travelers are definitely, leisures, as we've talked earlier, is definitely up, but people are taking shorter or going shorter distances due to the higher gas prices. I mean, people that maybe would, go across country, 3 or 4 years ago are now doing, in-state trips. I personally last week, I took my family to Atlanta, Georgia, which is a 3-hour drive from our house. So we're proud of that. We didn't, we went much shorter trips, but, we spent 4 days in Atlanta and spent money. So it's good. All of our hotels around the country, like I said, we're seeing leisure is up. We have, even with the gas prices have now kind of ebbed a little bit. They went down last week around the country, which was good for our business. But we're still waiting to get the group business back. I mean, people are still a little hesitant to get into groups. So we're hoping that's going to change in the near future. It all depends, the COVID and monkeypox, all these other things. But hopefully group business will come back. That's our big hope because we operate a lot of large hotels, a lot of meeting space. So yeah, we're very hopeful. But I mean, I'm a product of the University of Wisconsin Stout Hotel School, so it's been 17 years crossing the great state of Wisconsin. Currently, we're working on deals in Racine, Milwaukee. So still, even though I lived in Nashville now, I'm still very much involved in the Wisconsin hotel scene. So we love Wisconsin. It's a great state, and it's always been a good tourism state.
Thanks, Rich. And I'm not going to say who were the two 30-year-old people here that were here 30 years ago, but you all look pretty young for all the hard work you've done in the industry. So, but let me ask you a question here about the, as we talk here, I'm looking at these pop-ups on my screen all the time, and there's Priceline deals and this and that, Expedia deals. I know they shouldn't be coming into my computer here, but they are. What is the impact of these third-party hotel room sellers that we are bombarded with every day? How are they affecting the hotel business? Anyone?
Well, you want, I mean, we call them OTAs. I mean, they're an expensive way to get a hotel room. The commissions are extremely high. So in our business, we call revenue management. We tell our revenue management people at all of our hotels to make sure we reduce those, and those are kind of a last resort sell because the commissions are extremely high. And even with a franchise style, they're reduced a little bit, but it's a very expensive way to get your hotel room. So we only open up the OTA channels when we really need the rooms. Is what we do at our company.
So when you get the warning from a hotel that you only have 3 rooms available to choose from, you know that they're just trying to sell their inventory.
Yeah, trying to get people to click it.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to questions from the outside as well. If you have any questions, you want to put them in the chat, please do so, and we can work your questions into the discussion as we go along here. In terms of the kind of properties that we see being developed today, there used to be traditional hotel rooms and suites came out, and what kind of products do we see being very popular going forward, like micro hotel type units or boutique hotels, or is there a certain kind of product that's very much in demand or growing in demand?
You know, I'm seeing a lot of the some of the downtown boutique hotels are very popular, high-end boutique hotels, and then you know what we call the upper mid-scale type properties, and those are your Hampton Inns and Holiday Inn Expresses and all the way down. I mean, upper mid-scale is the most popular. It attracts the most demand. It's the middle of the road, so you get high-end travelers and you get rate sensitive travelers, but it tends to pull them all in. Plus they're I mean, every hotel is expensive to build today because of construction material and labor costs, but they're also capable of attracting a pretty strong rate or commanding a pretty strong rate. So that's why I think you see the upper mid-scale, and then the upscale really was starting to surge. I think, at least I saw it in 2019, and then when the pandemic hit, everything stopped. But there's still a good surge in mid-scale, and a lot of it, or upscale, but a lot of it has to do with franchises coming up with new brands all the time. I mean, I can't get the numbers right, but I know Marriott has some 30 brands, I think it is, Rich, and Hilton has, I don't know, 20 brands, different brands, and some of them obviously overlap in the class, but franchises have a lot to do with the sales and the development of hotels right now, because they're really pushing their products.
And don't forget with that too, there's the soft brands that seem to be getting more and more popular. I mean, I'm talking to people every day that are considering them or have put soft brands on traditionally independent properties. So
soft brands, what's a soft brand?
There's like I'll throw one out. There's like the Autograph Collection by Marriott, or there's Individuals by Radisson. So that's where the property can really still keep some of its traditional independent name and image. It doesn't have the same standards necessarily as some of the consistency standards as some of the other harder flags, I guess you'd call them, like a Hilton or Marriott. But it gets them into the reservation systems, and they try to develop a brand that shows you what kind of hotel it's going to be, even if it's going to be a historic high-end independent or a small mid-scale. So it's a way for these independents to still maintain some of their independence, but get into the reservation systems and use some of the benefits that come from some of those brands.
Is the Canopy by Hilton one of those type of properties?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I
okay.
have not worked with or seen one of those, but I've heard of them.
Yeah.
Typically, a Canopy is a higher end brand where you have the name Canopy. While as soft brands, you have your own name and autograph. Like I just stayed at the Edwin Hotel in Chattanooga last week, and it was the Edwin Hotel and it was part of the autograph collection. While as Canopy, I also stayed I'm actually working on a Canopy Hotel right now, and that's going to be in Racine, and that we'll call it the Canopy Hotel. We don't have any secondary name. But another trend that we've really found very prevalent, besides extended stay being very popular, is hotels with a multifamily component. We have a couple of projects where we've reduced the number of hotel rooms. We're turning the rest of the building into apartments and condos. We've seen that trend because multifamily is a very hot segment now. It's easy to get multifamily finance, why hotels have always been a little difficult. So we're looking at that. We're reducing our room count for the hotel portion of our hotel in Racine, and we're going to turn, it's still the same size building, but turn those hotel rooms into apartments.
That's an interesting thought. I was going to ask a question here down the road of a list of questions, and that is, what do communities do with tired hotels that aren't living up to their potential, that they've kind of gone through their useful life? Are you saying that there's a new kind of product that's being built that can be converted to something else other than a hotel?
Well, I mean, I was in Chattanooga last week, and like I said, there was an old hotel that's now apartments, and they totally gutted the old hotel. It's an exterior corridor hotel. Now it's not expensive apartments, it's probably mid-rate apartments, but that's one thing. And then we've seen over the course of our careers, I mean, turning hotels into various things. I mean, I've seen an old Ramada down in Florida that's turned into a school. Apartments are always an easy use. There was a big Sheraton in suburban Chicago. They turned into apartments, the old Sheraton Arlington Heights. So yeah, that's always the building's a solid building. That's always a good way. And right now, all over the country, Wisconsin included, multifamily and apartments are definitely in demand in any kind of housing. There's really right now that's the big, with the interest rates going up, it's slowed down a little bit, but still very hot commodity for people looking for new places to stay.
Mike, his calculator out. Go ahead, Mike.
I've seen an increase, just in the last few years of some of the smaller properties, the mid-price properties of yesterday, the 50, 60 room converted to senior housing, various levels of senior housing. And right now, there's probably 3 on our books that, that we're looking at that want to convert to senior housing. That's big right now. I mean, that's huge for these communities.
We're getting older, Nip.
Yeah, I know. But when I say
I might be checking in next week the way my life's going.
Mike, there used to be a rule of thumb in the hotel business. This is for city planners and developers that would say for every $1,000 of investment in a hotel room, you need to charge $1. So if you're going to charge $2 a night for your hotel, you got to spend $2,000 to build that hotel room. Is there a ratio today that communities can consider when they look at the cost of a hotel and how much it is they'd have to charge to make a hotel room feasible?
It's really an individual basis, and right now it's so difficult to do. I mean, I think if you use today's development costs, total development costs, it's I have never really broken it down by the per $1,000, but I'm going to guess it's somewhere. Rich, maybe you can help me. $3 or $4 for every 1,000, just because of the increased cost of everything. So, but rates are market driven, just like the hotel product itself. When you go into a community, again, a smaller community that maybe doesn't have hotels or has a supply of older properties, you really have to look at a bunch of different factors to determine where the rates are going to be and what kind of rate. And it all really depends on the demand generators, what kind of rates you can get from that. In the leisure market, they tend to be a little bit higher, and business market too, but there's more negotiated rates and discounting. So it's truly market driven, and it can vary. Wisconsin Dells is sitting at $300 average rate right now, whereas communities that surround it within a half hour are maybe in the upper 90s or low 100s. So it's truly demand and market driven.
Thanks, Mike. I'm looking at the chat here. If there's some questions that we can raise here.
Yeah, Bill, there was one that was dropped in. I don't know if the panelists have seen it, but have you seen any trends of hotels or resorts purposely operating at a lower occupancy, adjusting their business model? And then there's further explanations. So I'll let you can see that in the chat.
Yep.
I'm not seeing it, but that's,
Yeah, I saw that question, but I'm a little confused at what they were asking here. It says operating at lower occupancy, but
I can jump in on that maybe to start it anyway. Back when COVID hit and then we started reopening again, I guess in summer of 2020, or started seeing travelers coming back. As the employment crisis was around in some of the higher volume areas of the state, I guess it's probably more last summer, 2021, I'm sorry. But there were certainly hotels that weren't selling all the rooms. They're blocking off rooms and not selling them at full occupancy. It wasn't because they wanted to lower their payroll. It was because they didn't have the staff available to clean rooms and flip them and get people in. But I don't hear a lot of that happening anymore. That was just a survival tactic that many properties were using, especially in the resort areas last summer, just to deal with the lack of staffing.
Yeah. Another way to look at that question, I think, is looking at something called RevPAR, which takes your occupancy and you multiply it by your average room rate to come up with an indicator of how well your hotel is producing dollars for its real estate per room. And so in this case, if we have a lower occupancy, as the question asks, we want to make sure that we have a high enough room rate to compensate. Am I right, guys?
yeah. Well, I mean, that's, I was with a car dealer yesterday, a guy that owns 3 car dealerships. He said in the car business, they can't make enough cars. So what they do is they sell them at a lot, they sell less, but they make a lot more money. I mean, he says, they're the most profitable. He owns 2 Chrysler dealerships here in the Nashville. He said, I've had the most 2 profitable years, or the last year and this year, because we're selling our cars way over list price. We're not discounting. We're selling less cars, but we're making a lot more money per car. So I don't need as many salespeople. And then there's more people bringing in for service. So the same thing in the hotel business. If you sell less rooms, if you get the ADR, that's helping. The big trend in our business is, as everybody knows, we don't do daily housekeeping anymore. I mean, unless you ask for it, I mean, you can stay at a hotel for a week. Then personally, my wife always preferred that. She kind of didn't want anybody to come in our room when we stayed somewhere. So that's saved us a lot of money, not doing daily housekeeping. I was at a luxury hotel last weekend, and they just had a big bin in the hallway with fresh towels and toilet paper, and if you need anything, just grab it. It was really, it was very easy. If you need another couple of towels from tomorrow, just grab them. Then they have a little dumpster to put your dirty towels in. So it saved labor, but it was actually very convenient, very nice.
you weren't supposed to grab those on your way out, though.
Oh yeah, I guess my
I'm
suit.
just
I wasn't
telling you.
bringing that suitcase full of new linen. I said to my wife, "Hey, look at this! It's free gifts."
Well, I got a question for you. We just talked about the reducing staffing during these tough times in hotels. Are there any other innovative ways that hotels are cutting back on costs, becoming more efficient in certain ways? Like the restaurant industry has various ways of cutting their costs. Are there anything that's on the plate that you see throughout the state of Wisconsin in different operations where they've found ways to reduce costs during tough times?
Yeah, I think there's some things that we're seeing in terms of technology, especially. I mean, there's more and more properties that have invested in digital technology for digital check-in, where you can type your credit card in your phone and check in when the time comes, and it tells you what room number to go to. And you put your phone in front of the door and it opens. You never have to stop at a front desk, right? So see things like that. But I think you'll see even more. I think, in the long run, we'll see, just like there's a segment of the population now, younger than us probably, but there's a segment of the population that doesn't want to talk to people, and they just want to order food through whatever it is, Uber Eats or those types of things. I would see that some hotels will start doing room service in that fashion. Things that'll make it easy to check in, check out. So many properties now have the text services, so you can text the front desk if you have a question or an issue. All of those types of things help streamline operations and get people in and out as quickly and comfortably as possible. But the other flip side of that is still what Mike and Rich brought up, the stayover service. Our members are split on that, but there's a huge majority that either aren't offering stayover service or are only doing it upon request. And so many of them I talk to say that it's not coming back anytime soon or ever in their property. So I think that's a permanent change that has helped with the number of hours. But having said that, we talked about some of the extended stay hotels being built and all suites hotels and whatnot. Obviously, it takes longer to clean bigger rooms too. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out in the long term. But right now, focus is how can we maximize the staff that we have. Some hotels I hear, you might have somebody that's working as a dishwasher that's also helping with engineering and whatnot. A lot of all hands on deck situations. But there's not one. I wouldn't say there's one silver bullet that's going to solve all these problems. But I do think between creative staffing solutions and the use of technology, that's really going to help shape what our industry looks like in the future.
Thanks, Bill. I'm going to have a few more core questions for you in the next 8 minutes. And then I'd like to have participants share some of their questions and thoughts and observations. So we're going to kind of open up the mic in a little bit, but let's get through a few more things here if we can. One is, back to the real estate questions about hotel development. How does the risk compare in a hotel compared to, say, apartments or office space or light industrial space? Are hotels considered very risky investments? And if they're so risky, why are people investing in them?
Well, I'll answer that. Yes, they are. They're a risky investment. I mean, that's the first thing you tell a new developer or a new client, that there are great risks. Now, again, everything is market driven, but risks of competition, economic downturns, in the hotel business, you're selling your product 365 days, and it's an old cliche to the hoteliers, but once that day is over, whatever you haven't sold, you never sell it again. Whereas, especially right now, anything in housing is hot, like Rich said. I mean, there's a definite lack of supply in housing. So that's your real strong investment. Hotels have a tendency to be a pretty good long-term, and I don't mean real long-term, but like a 10-year type investment to a lot of investors and a lot of developers. There also is a level of community pride where in smaller communities, especially, people will want to invest a hotel because the city needs one or wants one. So the return on investment isn't necessarily as strong as it would be in maybe another housing sector or something light industrial, but it can be a satisfying return on investment, and yet you have a product that's benefiting the community. I see that a lot more than I ever thought I would. But overall, there's risks. There's definite risks in hotel operations.
In terms of communities and going back to downtowns again, it seems like more people are looking for an experience as opposed to a roadside generic location that can be replicated anywhere in the country. And downtowns provide that unique opportunity to to see a community, to eat downtown, and to be part of the community. Is that happening in many places where they are doing downtown hotels now, or do they still want to follow the fabric of being out by McDonald's on the edge of the town? Or it costs too expensive downtown?
Don't get me started on this. We don't have enough time. Rich, why don't you add something, and then I'll fill in.
We do all different types of hotels, but we like downtown hotels. We're working on 2 downtown hotels right now in Wisconsin, and we think that does offer a unique experience. They are going to be high-end hotels. They're not going to be Motel 6s or One's gonna be a Canopy, the other one's gonna be one of the soft brands, one of the major companies. So no, we like downtown. I think people do like experiences, but there is we're a segment. There's so many segments in the hotel business. I mean, you can still be very successful with a Motel 6 or something, but there is, I say, in the development world, we see a lot of extend stay hotels being done. I was with the ESA people yesterday in Nashville, and all the major brands now have extend stays. Red Roof Inns has extend stay. I had dinner with those people last night. They're talking about how they're doing the Red Roof Inns got home something or other brand. They're going to start doing dual brands with Red Roof Inns and extend to stay. And then you've got Wyndham's coming out with an extended stay, and then they've also come out with soft brands. I mean, Wyndham's got their soft branded brand called Trademark. So you see a lot of that. So I say those are the two segments in the most active right now is extend stay and then boutique hotels. That seems to be the most, and the boutique ones are usually traditionally downtown properties.
Thanks, Rich. To put Bill in the spotlight here one more time here. Sorry to pick on you, but this is a tough question here. How are room taxes used in the state? Are they used effectively from your perspective? And what else can be done with the use of room taxes to make them more designed for their purpose?
Sure. So I'd say that it really depends on the corner of the state you're talking about. There's so many communities that are a great example that use those tourism dollars and those room tax dollars for tourism as they were intended. Right now, the law for most communities in the state is that 70% needs to be spent on tourism promotion and tourism development. And the other 30 can go to municipality. There are municipalities that put a lot more than that into tourism, and it's really meant to put heads in beds, which brings back $8 for every dollar in tourism promotion. It brings back in state sales tax or county sales tax. So it's really it lifts the boat for everyone. Where our organization gets involved is oftentimes we see communities that misspend room tax dollars, and we would rather take those dollars and buy a fire truck or pave a road or whatever it may be, and all real needs of the community. But I think it's important to remember that hotel owners are already paying the same taxes that every other business pays out there. We pay our property taxes. We do our sales taxes and all of that as well. So this is a special tax on top of our industry. And back in the 60s when it was started, there were a lot of hoteliers that did support it with the concept it would help us promote our local areas as destinations. And today we consider it, a one leg of a three-legged stool. We have the room tax supporting the municipal promotions or the area as a destination. We have the state, Travel Wisconsin, that's telling people, hey, come to Wisconsin or stay in Wisconsin for your vacations. It's a great place to be. And they do a fantastic job at that. And then the third one is obviously the hotels themselves need to be doing their own marketing. And once you get somebody to come to your destination, now it's your job to get them to stay at your hotel. Without any of those legs, that stool falls over and can't support a strong tourism economy. So that's really how we look at it. And of course, it gets a lot more complicated, and the law it's a little too vague in some areas. But there are a lot of areas in the state that really use that effectively and help bring visitors in.
Good. Thank you, Bill. You're a real strong advocate for your industry. Thank you. Well, let's turn to questions from participants and anything that's been put in the chat. There are 4 questions I see in chat.
Yeah, Bill, I'll read the first one from Christine. Christine writes, the biggest issue is the staffing and affordable housing in the area. Specifically housing for the staff. I have considered partnering with the university in the area to use their dorms. The question is, what have you found that can address this situation?
Good question.
That answers that.
No. Do you want to take that one, or?
Yeah. No, you can, Rich. I'd be interested to hear what larger hotels are doing, because I know what the smaller ones are.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 things that we are concerned, and staffing needs are number one on our plate. We have our company has long had a culture of we call the journey, which is a culture of empowerment and letting employees make some major decisions that they're capable of. But then the other is the benefit program. You have to offer competitive benefits, but part of that is housing. That's something we just discussed the other day. Housing is becoming so expensive for people generally. We're very concerned about. We were discussing that the other day here in Nashville. The average apartment rent is $1,700 a month for an apartment. So I mean that's a lot of money for someone that's making 10, 11 bucks an hour. So we're actually are looking at that. We've actually taught to several universities about extra dorm space. We are looking at possibly in some of our newer projects, building in some employee housing. We were talking about that the other day at a meeting. Maybe like and someone asked about extended stay, and our extended stay hotels, maybe actually having several apartments in those. And the word what's extended stay, we consider anybody that stays more than 7 nights in our world is an extended stay guest. So hotels that accommodate people more than a week, and that typically means some sort of cooking facilities, a refrigerator, a stovetop, microwave, whatever. So that's what we could define extended stay. But in our extended stay properties, we actually have looked at several models where we actually have employees live at the hotel. And that's good for the employee, but it's also good for us because then all of a sudden if something happens at midnight, instead of having someone at the front desk, we have a phone there. And if there's the person at the front desk and the maintenance guy that live in the hotel, they'll be alerted right there. So we think that may be a solution to some of our housing issues in some of our new extended stay properties, build in employee housing into the hotel unit.
In some of the smaller units or smaller communities that I've been in that are trying to attract their first hotel or their first new hotel in years, in smaller properties. So if you have a 60-room property or a 50-room property, it's difficult to set a couple of rooms aside. It's not difficult, but it can be costly. I'm seeing the purchase of anytime there's an availability of a home where they'll convert homes into employee housing and try to get as many as they can, almost like the homes around the community, around a university, especially in communities that don't have a university. They have to find alternatives. I think you're going to see a lot more employee housing established in some of these communities that would be centrally located to several cities. And again, smaller communities. It's the only way that this industry is really going to survive. They have to put more attention to employee housing as well as employee benefits. But the housing is a huge deal, and to find a home to purchase as a hotel owner or a hotel investor, that's hard to do. And when you do, it works out. But I think creating employee housing is an absolute must anywhere.
I'll tell you a story. 40 years ago, I was with a company, and we had a chain in Wisconsin, based in Madison, Wisconsin, called Roadstar Inns. And Roadstar Inns had an apartment for a husband-wife management team. And then that was going back, 40, 45 years ago. And, then, that was pretty prevalent in those days. Where at the economy hotels, you provide an apartment for the management. It's typically a husband-wife team because that way you'd have 2 people working at the hotel for you, and they'd live in there in an apartment. I said, at the time I was with a company, we had it was called Hillmark Corporation. We had, I think, 15 of those in the state of Wisconsin, and they all had the apartments.
Interesting.
And maybe one other thing just to throw out there is that I think it's important to understand that it's a huge issue for us, but it's a huge issue for a lot of industries and in a lot of businesses, well beyond the hospitality community. I was speaking on room tax up in one of the Wisconsin communities, and part of the event I was at, their Economic Development Corporation director spoke, and that was one of the main points of his talk. Is we have all these businesses that want to grow and want to expand and want to hire, but there's nowhere for these people to live right now. So and while we want to develop more affordable housing, the developers we can get engaged with us want to build higher end housing, and it's hard to build more affordable housing as construction costs are higher. So it's just such a big problem right now that's so much huger, they're so much bigger than our industry, but it really has a significant impact on our industry because of how labor intensive we are.
Very true.
There is another question, Bill. This is from Patrick. Patrick asks, how has the shared economy, Airbnb, impacted the lodging industry? And you alluded to that a little bit, but if you could elaborate a bit, that would be helpful.
Anyone?
I think it's market driven. I mean, some places it has impacted us. I mean, in areas, especially downtown properties, it has been, but roadside hotels less impact. It just depends. It's been market driven. I mean, it hasn't been. I remember going to a hotel conference 10 years ago, and everybody thought that industry would destroy the hotel business. It has not, but it has had an effect. But it's all market driven. Some markets it's had a major impact, some it's had minimal. So, but it has not destroyed the hotel business. And Airbnb's got a lot of bad raps. I mean, you hear a lot of people that there was a group that was here in Nashville last weekend where they they were robbed. Their Airbnb, and they it's not like a hotel room where you've got all those people. You're kind of isolated. Moments, we were here in our house and somebody robbed us. We were kind of scared. Well, hotels, you've got security, you've got more people. So I mean, I think the consumer is that it's become a little more resonant too, that there are some dangers of staying in somebody's house over a hotel where there's a lot more security than there is in somebody's personal home.
And that you hit the point, Rich, because hotels need to, I mean, marketplace rentals are here to stay, right? Short-term rentals, they're here to stay. Wisconsin has, according to Airbnb, 14,445 marketplace rentals right now, or at least as of the beginning of 2022. So that's 14% of the supply of overnight accommodations, commercial overnight accommodations. So they're here to stay. But Rich, you were hitting it. Hotels need to promote the fact that they do have 24-hour staff, which is a security perception. They have indoor pools, and most of the Airbnbs don't have indoor pools or other recreation like fitness centers. The continental breakfast, you have the perception at least of consistent internet access and high technology that's providing consistent service. So there's a lot of things the hotels need to focus on. Typically the Airbnb type user is looking, their reasons for booking Airbnb is space, right? Because you can rent a 4-bedroom or a 5-bedroom home for when you divide that among all the guests, it's cheaper than a hotel. And they also like the fact that they by themselves. There's not somebody living next to them or staying next to them, and those are all good, great. I've used Airbnb. I mean, they can be very good, but they're typically located away from the community unless you find a downtown one, but in smaller communities, whereas hotels can be located closer to where the action is, and again provide those services that Airbnbs don't. That's what you promote as a hotel.
Certainly makes us be on our game, right? But
Absolutely.
in my world, we really advocate for making sure that those short-term rentals are held to the same standards that we are, and they have to get licensed, and they have to be paying the sales tax and room tax and everything else that we do. But I mean, if you look at how that marketplace has changed in the last 10, 12 years, when I left WHLA and my membership role, it was really just the beginning of that industry. And I remember what you guys said when people thought it was going to be the death knell of an industry. Instead, I think it's forced us to innovate, and it's forced us to be competitive. And now what we ask is, okay, you can force that innovation, but just keep us at the same level playing field instead of having a whole separate set of rules for them.
And I think communities, are doing a lot of them are doing their best to collect the room tax dollars from Airbnb, and that's relatively new. But honestly, it kind of saved a lot of these communities in 2020 when the hotel business, went down 50%. Like we had that room tax analysis of Wisconsin, 79 communities reported a higher room tax collection in 2020 than 2019, which is absolutely amazing to me in a pandemic year. But I believe a lot of it had to do with the new collection of room tax of Airbnbs. They were also in markets that weren't impacted by the stay-at-home order. They were in markets where people actually went when they were told to stay at home. So, but it has had a positive impact on communities. It's just how do you collect it and how do you monitor it and how do you audit it?
Sure. And but the flip side of that, I think, is people are buying up these STRs that traditionally were single family homes, and now
Absolutely.
we're talking about this housing crisis, and it's just even further exacerbating that problem. So I think it'll be an interesting debate over the next several years on how much that industry is allowed to grow in various cities and municipalities across the state. But we shall see.
Thanks, guys.
There's another question from Gina. Gina asks, is what the city wants or thinks it wants consistent with what the consumer is looking for currently?
I think it is in a lot of cases. I mean, there's a lot of cities, the communities that I work with, they just want lodging, and I think they understand that the market is going to dictate what type of lodging is going to be successful or the optimum, if any. But I found them to be pretty accurate, and we think this, especially if they've been in the community for a while, maybe they're business owners, the leaders of the community, run a business, they know what the customers are like, they know what the visitors are all about, and they're the front line that hear from people saying, hey, where can we stay? What's the closest place? So I think communities are actually pretty good. I mean, some of them, maybe they want a resort, maybe they want a full service Hyatt Regency in a Comfort Inn world, but I find that far and few between. They usually have a pretty good grip on the type of property that'll work.
Great. We did have a question that came in from one of the participants prior to in the registration field. And the question is, how does a community with no current hotel or lodging resources find direction in the search for a viable investor to build?
I don't want to answer that because it's, I'm not, this is
a feasibility consultant.
Love to help you. Absolutely.
Oh, Mike.
Because I end up calling Rich and Bill for advice and for data anyway. But that's one way of doing it. The other one is, if a community wants to, survey your businesses, survey your customers or your local businesses, whether they're retail or they're manufacturing or find out if they have people coming into town. That's what we do, and we do a feasibility study. That's a big part of it. You look at all the factors that are in it, but a real driving point is what are the area businesses, and the attractions and the events that are bringing people to town. What are they saying? What are they saying in numbers? And it doesn't take much to figure out that, yeah, we would support a hotel, even seasonally, as long as there's some consistent level of demand. That's how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I wrote a book 25 years ago as a choice we call it the Development Handbook, and the first thing we look at is what are the demand generators? Why would people want to come to this city and stay here? So if there's demand generators there, as Mike said, but we always need a document. So we always, when cities call us, we always say, well, first thing you should do is hire a consultant to do a feasibility, because if there's demand there, then we can go out to the development community and say, hey, here's this study. I mean, we're working on a deal right now. We had a study done, and we had 2 developers call us the other day about it. So we sent them the study that illustrated why this particular site was a good site, who would stay there, and what they generate in terms of rate. So that's really the first tool to get a hotel in your town.
Would there be any, you guys are the experts on this side of things, but it seems to me like there are a lot of areas that have multiple hotels that have either the same ownership or the same management company, or in some cases both. For people just looking to begin like that, would it make sense for them to have conversations with hoteliers that are in their neighboring cities in terms of what they're looking for and what it would take to get there?
I think it would. I mean, it can be kind of gutsy, and if typical, a lot of hotel owners or operators don't want to share a lot of information. Some of them will share their occupancy and average rate, but they won't tell you how they get there. And that's where it is. But again, it's not too difficult if you ask other people in the industry, the ones that are providing that demand, or look at the attendance of attractions and even small attractions or annual events. They keep pretty good tally of attendance, and they'll give you a ton of information. And then you look at how the neighboring properties are doing, the communities where people are going. Even though you want them to stay in your town, they're traveling over to the next town over. You can usually find out how the properties are doing overall.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of leads from our general managers at our existing hotels. Just recently, I got a call from our general managers that they had met some of this next city over. And they wanted a hotel at that particular location. We had a Marriott Courtyard, and so yeah, we actually are looking into that, possibly doing another hotel in the next town over. Probably not a Marriott Courtyard, but maybe a Fairfield or another segment of the industry. But to do another hotel, so yeah, that's if someone wants a hotel in their town, they should look at maybe who's down the road, who's got the nice hotel at the next city over, because you want to make sure you get involved with people that are good operators and do a good run a good hotel. I mean, just a little site visit, walk around, you can see how the hotel's run. But yeah, that's always a good place to find somebody. And that you can always call Rich Sprecher at any time. Every time you drink that Sprecher beer, you think, I better call that guy Rich Sprecher.
I got one kind of an emotional question that's been haunting me for the past 40 years. And but I want to save that question for the very, very end. We have time for perhaps one more question from someone else. Well, I'll get to my haunting question.
Yeah, I'm scared to even hear.
Yeah, no.
Haunted
In 1979,
my fingers on the leave.
Yeah,
1979, I graduated from college. I studied hotel administration, and I drove to Memphis, Tennessee to take my first job at Holiday City, which was the nucleus of the hotel industry. They had the Holiday Inn chain, which was a huge chain, huge office building, the Perkins restaurant chain, and they were investing in a new Hampton Inn chain. It was a total change of the industry at that time. And my job was to go into each hotel, each company operated hotel in the country, and travel to each one and do an audit of their books, and spend a lot of time looking at labor standards. How many minutes per room does it take to clean a room? How many drinks per cocktail waiter or waitress can one do? How many front desk clerks do you need to squeeze out the money to make the thing profitable? Everything's about productivity and efficiency and making the employee work as hard as he or she can. And I did the same kind of work in Boston, where I worked for another company, where I had to just look at numbers all the time and squeezing any penny out of the profit of the hotel and report it to the owner of the company. And all this time, last week I came back from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I looked at the hotel, and the room cleaner was acting as the host in the cafeteria, the morning breakfast nook area, and answering the front desk at the same time. So I can kind of go on about my little rant here, and I apologize. But it makes me think that people in the industry, in many cases, not all cases, but are treated poorly. The nature of the job is difficult for people, and their compensation is not very good. And unfortunately, since I started with Holiday Inns a long time ago, it hasn't really changed very much. The hotel employees, it's tough work making a bed in a room. It really is. After you have to do 15 a day, you're just tired. Do you see any changes in the structure of hotels in terms of better working conditions, better pay, better benefits, or is this just the way it's going to be forever? Anyone? I started to be a sour guy here, ending my discussion, but I think it's important.
It definitely has. I mean, I think that we just did our employee survey a couple of weeks ago, and we actually got a very good response. But I mean, we've always been a big believer in a good benefit package and a competitive pay, but more importantly, an environment. Like I said, we have a culture. It's a 35-page document about empowering our employees, empowering the whole team, that feel like we're one family. Like I said, we survey our employees twice a year, and if we see a problem, this is an anonymous survey, so anybody can say anything they want. If there's a problem, we immediately address it. The general manager should address that at the property level, but we get those surveys at the corporate level. And we look at them, every twice a year, and then we decide if there's something we have to do. But no, I think pay's going up. I think benefit packages, people want more freedom on scheduling. We've noticed that trend. I mean, that's, you've got some ability in the hotel business. It's not like, an account where everybody can work from home, but we're trying to see if we can maybe do more flexible scheduling with our employees. But no, I think the employee has got the upper hand now than they have in the last couple of years because there's such a shortage. I mean, I think that every employer at every industry, not just our industry, has got to look at that. I mean, I have 2 kids at work. One works at Target, one works at Panera Bread. I mean, I get the feedback from all the time, kind of what they think about their employer. So yeah, I think that the employee has, I think working conditions will get better, and they have gotten better. Just as a necessary evil that we've got. If we don't have better working conditions, we don't have employees. You've got to have employees to run a hotel. You need people, associates to, clean the rooms. It may be limited, maybe once a week, and check people in. So we need those people. So I think that hopefully, I don't know how, in your travels. I mean, I know as I just came back from a trip, everybody, all the employees at all the hotels, I stayed at a Residence Inn, I stayed at Autograph, stayed all different, and everybody was phenomenal. I actually told the GMs of both hotels I stayed at, you guys are doing a great job because everybody was so friendly and accommodating. Those people, that's not phoniness, friendliness. They're either like it or they don't. You can always tell when somebody's having a bad day at a hotel.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I talk to every time I come into a hotel, I talk to the front desk folks, and just the other night I was talking to 2 gals who are just so happy to be there and so happy to be working and telling me how much they love learning about the hotel industry and they want to be GM someday and all that. I think that it's incumbent upon us to show that that the culture has changed in hotels. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It's been exacerbated over the last couple of years because it had to be. The pay has gotten better and the culture has changed, but there's also career paths that you can, like we said before, you can become an accountant, you can become an engineer, you can become a salesperson, you can become a general manager or even an owner someday. So I think that's an important part of the message that we need to preach, is that there's a lot of opportunities in the hospitality space. And that we do have a good culture now. And I think one great example of that, I know we gotta wrap this up, but I was talking to a general manager the other day who said, Bill, I had an employee come up to me and said, I've been working 41 hours a week, way too many weeks. I need to be back to 40. And she said, like, her jaw almost dropped. But that's what we live in right now. And now, that hotelier is bending over backwards to make sure that employee gets what they need. So we are living in different times, and I think we all understand the need to develop a great culture for our employees.
Guys, you're good leaders. Thank you very much for that ending.
Yes, and thank you all for joining. It is 3 minutes over, so thank you to all the guest presenters and for Bill for moderating. We really appreciate it. And we will have this recording on our website for future viewing. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And again, thank you for joining us.